Good morning, everybody. I'm Shira Apple. I'm the Public Affairs Specialist with the Wisconsin Office of the SBA. I want to welcome you to today's webinar with SBA and the Small Business Development Center. We know this is a challenging time, and we are really glad to be able to bring you something that might help support you through this COVID-19 situation. So today we're doing this webinar on keys to business survival. Colleen Merrill, who heads up the Small Business Development Center at UW-Oshkosh, will talk about cash flow. That'll actually be second. And we're going to start off with Tammy Clendenning, SBA's lead economic development specialist for Wisconsin, and she'll be talking about currently available SBA relief options and also a bit about some of the programs that may come back depending on how Congress progresses on funding them. Next slide, please. Oh, and there they are. Okay. So first we're going to touch on the programs that are subject to congressional funding. As you may have seen in the news media, those are being discussed. I believe the new version of the CARES Act passed the Senate and is going to the House. So we may be hearing more about these soon. And after that, we'll talk on what is currently available, and then we'll turn over to Colleen and talk about cash flow, and then give you a chance to ask questions after that. And with that, I will turn it over to Tammy Clendenning.
Great, thank you, Shira. Thank you all again for attending. We really appreciate it, and hopefully we're able to provide some useful information to you today. The SBA has been providing ongoing support and assistance to small businesses for more than 65 years, and obviously now is more important than ever. We will continue to help businesses start, grow, expand, and now recover. So what we'll talk about today is what's currently available. I'll give a little historical perspective on a couple of the programs, and then we'll turn it over to Colleen. So thank you. Next slide, please. Great, thank you. So the Economic Injury Disaster Loan and the Paycheck Protection Program are both programs that have been out there. We'll talk a little bit about them. They are both down right now. The Paycheck Protection Program obviously is awaiting additional funds. We're also hoping that funding will be more for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program as well. We'll continue to watch the news media and see what happens in the next couple of days. But just to give you some of the statistical information on the programs that have gone through already, the SBA has processed the equivalent of 14 years worth of loans in 14 days across the country. So a significant feat was accomplished there, of course, with our lending partners. In terms of the Paycheck Protection Program, here in Wisconsin, there were 43,395 loans representing about $8.3 billion. We were in the top 10 for the country for PPP approvals. The Economic Injury Disaster Loan, as of the 20th, the Wisconsin borrowers received 195 loans representing about $39 million. Those have ranged in dollar amounts. We don't have any data on the specific dollar amounts, but some of the businesses that we have referred to, some have received smaller loans in the $25,000 to $50,000 range. Others have received loans. We heard of one for about $500,000, one for about $168,000. So again, it really ranges depending on the specific business. Here in Wisconsin, there were about 9,000 Economic Injury Disaster Loan advances representing about $43 million. And really in about the last week and a half or so is when we have heard from borrowers that they've received those funds. Nationally, for the PPP, approximately 74% of the loans were for $150,000 or less. We did have about 5,000 lenders across the country that administered the PPP program. And it's interesting to note that approximately 60% of those loans approved were by banks that of less than $10 billion in assets. and no single lender accounted for more than 5% of the total amount of money through the program. There were about 1.6 million loans done across the country, representing that $349 billion. And there were existing lenders, but then the SBA also worked very diligently to add new lenders. So some lenders hadn't done an SBA loan for quite a while, and so we had to get their status updated so that they could submit loans. We also added new lenders. Across the country, there were about 645 additional lenders added to the program. In addition to that, there were non-bank lenders that were added, including organizations such as Intuit, PayPal, Square, Cabbage, OnDeck, Bluevine, and Funding Circle. So again, wondering if the program does reopen, we do encourage you to work with your local lender, or if your local lender is not administering the program, perhaps another local lender. But it's very important to note, too, that there are these non-bank lenders that are available. So many small businesses may have a relationship with one of these, and that may be an alternative. Next slide, please. So we'll talk about the EIDL. The Economic Injury Disaster Loan actually is a program that's been around for quite some time, but it's been used on a much smaller scale. So for example, if there's hurricanes, or perhaps here in Wisconsin there was tornadoes or flooding. So it has never been used in the magnitude in which it's being used for this particular disaster declaration all across the country. It is a working capital loan, and the use of funds may be to pay fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, and other bills. And again, keeping in mind that it's working capital to help get a business through a difficult time. It is not meant for expanding a business. It's not meant for consolidating. It's really working capital to get a business through. This particular loan is done directly through the SBA, so it is not done through your local lender. So the application, when it does become available, again, it's done directly through the SBA's website. And again, so some of this we'll talk about a little bit historically, but then also perhaps, depending as the programs get more funding. There's no cost to apply for the EIDL. And criteria that the SBA uses is a credit history that's acceptable to the SBA, as well as the ability to repay that loan. Interest rates for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan are 3.75% for small businesses and 2.75% for nonprofits. Terms do range up to 30 years, and most of the loans that we've heard were either receiving a 15 or a 30-year term. Eligibility is based on the size and type of business, so it does have to qualify as a small business under SBA rules. So again, that's dependent upon your NAICS code. And with the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, there is a 12-month deferral of payments. So interest will continue to accrue, but a borrower will not need to make a payment on that for the first 12 months. Next slide, please. So included with the application for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan is the advance portion of that. The advance is for up to $10,000. That is dependent upon the amount of employees. So it's $1,000 per employee based or up to a maximum of $10,000. And when a borrower completed the application, if they put 0 in for employees, the system would automatically assign 1 for the owner, meaning that they would be eligible for up to $1,000. It's the application for the advance is part of the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. And again, the funds can be used for payroll and other operating expenses that they need on a working capital basis. Next slide, please. Okay, so for the Paycheck Protection Program, and again, we'll talk a little historically about this as well. What I'll do is I'll talk a little bit about some of the way that the program was structured for the first $349 billion. We don't know if and when funding is available for this, if the rules will be exactly the same or if they will make some tweaks. So we'll talk about it from a historical perspective, knowing that there may be some changes in the program as it comes live. Again, it provides a direct incentive for small businesses to keep their workers on the payroll. It is administered through the SBA, but applications are done directly through your local lender. So I would probably start having some conversations with your local lenders when the new funding is approved. As I mentioned before, there are some non-bank entities that have also been approved, so that may be an option maybe for some of the smaller borrowers who either don't have a lending relationship with a bank or if they're struggling to get through. So that's something that we're encouraging. Again, if the money is reappropriated here, it will be on a first-come, first-served basis, so we do encourage you to go ahead and get that submitted. The loan funds can be used for qualified expenses, and I'll talk about that in just a minute here. We do encourage any PPP loan recipient to track your expenses very carefully. That way you can make that request for forgiveness and you will have that documentation. One thing that I have heard has been some advice to some small businesses is that you keep these funds separate from your normal funds so that you can track those. But then also, if you don't use all those funds for the appropriate uses, you can either return those funds and still be eligible for forgiveness, or just understand that depending on the forgiveness aspect of the loan, some of that may be turned into a loan and not forgiven. You do have to supply the bank with with documentation, and again, that forgiveness aspect will go through the lender as well. The lender does rely on the documents that you provide. They will do a cursory look at those documents and make sure that everything seems right, but it is up to the borrower to provide that documentation to the lender. And again, as we mentioned before, there may be some changes on the Paycheck program. We just don't know exactly how they will allocate that. But again, who is eligible for a Paycheck Protection program? As it was set up, it's employers with 500 or fewer employees, 501c3s with fewer than 500 employees, independent contractors, sole proprietors, self-employed, tribal businesses that meet the SBA size standards, and 501c19 veterans organizations. There are affiliate rules that are associated with this, so any business that does have common ownership or common management will come under the affiliation rule, and maybe so that it'll look at all the different employee counts for the different affiliated businesses. However, there was some waivers with the PPP program, the way that it was set up previously, that any business that has a NAICS code beginning with 72 is not bound by those same affiliation rules, as well as franchise operators. So again, we don't know if that'll continue going forward, but that's how it's been set up. The other thing too is all employees count as one. So regardless of whether it's a full-time, part-time, or seasonal employee, that does count as one. So if you have one full-time employee, one part-time employee, that counts as 2 employees. Also, faith-based organizations are eligible for the PPP, so that's something that's a bit of a change as well. Again, loan terms are 2 years with a 6-month deferral on payments. The interest rate for the loan is 1%. The maximum loan is $10 million per borrower, and again, that's based on a specific need. There is no collateral or personal guarantees. There are no guarantee fees for this, and principal can be forgiven if the proceeds are used for qualifying expenses, and that includes payroll costs, rent, mortgage interest, and utilities. And the payroll costs can include all payroll costs, including insurance premiums, wages, vacation days, sick pay, unless it was qualified leave wages and qualified sick leave wages that received a credit under the Family's First Coronavirus Act, but otherwise those may be included. The loan amount is calculated by using the average monthly payroll times 2.5%. So basically, a borrower is eligible for 2.5 times their average monthly payroll. There are a couple of different determination methods to look at that. So it can either be based on the calendar year for 2019, or it may be used for February 15th through June 30th of 2019, so the average monthly payroll for that time frame. Or if a business was not in business in 2019, it also may be from January 1st of 2020 to February 29th of 2020. And again, payroll costs are limited to the first $100,000 in cash compensation, so that doesn't include non-cash benefits. Forgiveness terms, so the loan proceeds must be used for the following expenses for the 8-week period commencing on the origination date of the loan. So basically when the first disbursement on the loan occurs, that is when the 8-week period starts. And again, the use of funds is payroll costs, rent, mortgage interest, and utilities. And it's important to note that at least 75% of the funds must have been used for payroll purposes to be eligible for forgiveness. So that's a little bit of information on the Paycheck Protection Program as it was administered before. We assume it'll be very, very close to the same, but there may be some tweaks on that, but that's a little bit about the PPP. Next slide, please. So the SBA also does have debt relief on some existing loans. So if a borrower or a business does have an already in place 7A, 504, or microloan, the SBA will be making the payments on those loans for 6 months. So if an institution receives a payment after March 27th from a borrower, they are to let the borrower know that no payment is required, and either they can return that payment to the borrower or it can be applied as a principal payment. But again, we're making the payment including principal, interest, and fees. A borrower may make additional principal payments during this time if they like, but there is no requirement for that. Also, that SBA debt relief is available for any new 7A, 504, or microloan, and that those loans must be completed and dispersed before September 27th in order to be eligible for that debt relief. In addition, if a borrower does have an existing disaster loan, so one from a prior period, maybe from a tornado or flooding or anything else, the administrator has given a deferral through December 31st of 2020 on all existing disaster loan products. So just you can know that. Next slide, please. There is an SBA emergency bridge loan that is to existing current clients of SBA Express lenders. So if you're interested in that Express bridge loan, reach out to your existing lenders. And again, that is up to $25,000. And it is intended to have faster processing than a traditional loan. So we would encourage you to reach out to your existing lender. Next slide, please. And real quickly, before I transition over to Colleen, I will mention that as I mentioned before, the SBA will be making loan payments for any new 7A, 504, or microloan. The microloan programs, that is a loan up to $50,000 that is done through our intermediaries. You can go to our website, sba.gov, for a listing of those intermediaries that are doing the microloans. The 7A loans, the maximum loan amount is $5 million. There are varying guarantees depending on a specific program, but generally speaking, the maturities on a traditional 7A loan are 10 years for working capital, up to 25 years for real estate. And there are size standards on there, but there are also alternative size standards. So we want to make those available to as many borrowers as possible. The 504, and again, you can go onto our website for a listing of the SBA lenders, although the majority of the lenders in Wisconsin are SBA lenders. And then the 504 loan program, that is a long-term fixed asset program that is meant for buying a building, for renovating a building, for buying large equipment. And again, more information on all these programs, including the disaster programs, can be found at our website. So with that, I'll go ahead and transition over to Colleen.
Thank you, Tammy. And thank you to the SBA for everything that you've been doing to help businesses during this time. Go back to that previous slide if you wouldn't mind, please. Thank you. So I'm going to kind of go over some real basics on cash flow, what it is and why it matters. And then kind of walk you through a cash flow forecasting statement to help you determine what kind of resources you're looking for and what you need in order to survive. So what is it and why it matters? I once heard profit is a matter of opinion put together by your business accountant. Cash, however, is a lifeblood of your business. You may be able to operate without profit for a little while, but not without cash. Forecasting your cash flow and maintaining liquidity are even more critical in an uncertain economy, especially knowing that 82% of small businesses fail because of cash flow problems. And this is what is keeping owners up at night. Can I pay my rent? Can I meet payroll? Can I make my debt load payments? This is the why it matters. But what really is cash flow forecasting? So cash flow forecasting is a process that helps business owners identify how much money they will have at any available given point in time. And we are focused on the cash that goes in and the cash that goes out during this period of time. Having this information puts you in a position to be better prepared. So when we work with our clients at the SBDC, we recommend cash flow forecasting with just about every business we work with. Sometimes we recommend developing a monthly cash flow for the first year and then an aggregate for following years. And sometimes we request they work out a 13-week cash flow to see if they have the resources they need in the near future. And that's what we're going to focus on later. And I will tell you that not every business wants to take the time. They push back and they come back with questions such as, doesn't my income statement show me what I'm making? I'm making a profit, so why would I need to take the time to complete a cash flow forecast? Or, I've never done this before and I'm really unsure of what it is. Can you help me? And that's why we're here. Planning is always key to a successful business. A 2016 JP Morgan Chase report states that most of the 600,000 small businesses they surveyed only had enough funds to cover 27 days of expenses. Now, only having 27 days may leave them in a bind when it comes to unexpected circumstances. Now, to be clear, cash flow forecasting is not your revenue during a period of time from your income statement. It is not your balances in accounts receivable or accounts payable. It shows you how much cash is going into your account and how much is coming out during a certain period of time. So you can then determine, can you pay your bills today? What does next month look like? Next quarter? It shows you how much you have today and how much you'll have in the future. And of course, when we are doing cash flow forecasting, we are estimating. If you are an established business, you will base your estimates on your historical cash cycle. For a startup, when you anticipate, you will be anticipating when funds will come in and what bills will need to be paid. So this document varies tremendously depending on your type of business, what industry you're in, and what your goals are. And it's not oftentimes very precise, but you get better at it. So I understand when people push back. However, it is my opinion that cash flow forecasting is a very effective tool that brings your focus on your business. And it helps you understand how fast you're depositing your revenues and if you're really leveraging your terms of payment. And best of all, you do get better at this with the more practice you have. So let's look at first the basics of a cash flow statement before we go into forecasting. Next slide. So cash flow statements can be complex depending on the business you're in. So I'm just going to do a general overview. The cash flow statement is different from forecasting as this is truly historic. This is a snapshot of how cash flowed through your business. It shows what you have done over a period of time. It could be a month, a quarter, or a year. On the next slide, we'll review forecasting. But if you currently have a business, tapping into your cash flow statement will be extremely helpful. These numbers will help you build your forecast on where you're going. Now, some of you may be operating in QuickBooks or other accounting software, and you should be able to produce a statement of cash flows to review. Now, I can't get too complex in the few minutes we have here, but I can give you the basics. Reaching out to your local SBDC office can help you dig deeper into your unique business and help you forecast. So for this webinar, we're going to focus on the direct method using actual cash flow information from the company's operation. A cash flow statement will show you the beginning of balance of cash that you had at a certain period of time, the receipts you deposited, the bills you paid, and then you come up with an ending balance. Cash flow statements are broken into three main parts that you can see here: the operating, investing, and financing activities. Most of your activities are going to come from your operating activities. These are the receipts that you actually deposit into your account from your customers. These are the payments that you made to the supplier, your wages to employees, or interest received and paid. The next section is your investing activities, and this is changes in your equipment, your assets or investments. This is when you actually buy or sell something, a physical asset. And finally, your financing activities are just like it sounds. It's what you do to finance your operations, cash from investors or from a bank, or actually loans that you paid down. Every dollar you deposit and every dollar you spend needs to have a place. And don't worry about getting it right if it's your first time putting together a cash flow forecast. Just make sure that every dollar coming in or out has a place. The difference between your inflows and your outflows is your ending cash position. So I wanted to explain the cash flow statement because you can see this if you currently have a business. And you can see the three main parts. But for our 13-week cash flow template, we want to keep that a bit simpler. Next slide. So understanding the foundations of cash flow, and I'm not sure if you can click on that Excel document that is in there and bring that up. That would be great. And that's okay. I can always share it with anybody who is interested. But I can go through it. So you have an understanding of how our money has flowed through our business over the last year through our cash flow statement. With that, we are able to build a forecast based on those assumptions. If your business is cyclical, we're able to forecast based on patterns we have seen over the past years. We will also be able to adjust based on what we know or what we may expect. Perhaps you're thinking about bringing on a new product or service, and it will be made available in 2 months. Perhaps you hired a marketing firm to handle a social media campaign and expect an influx of customers or orders. Or perhaps you're in the middle of a pandemic and you need to adjust for a sharp decline in sales. Forecasting is key. Our goal is to look for potential liquidity shortfalls that we can prepare for before they occur. So how do we manage? We identify all our cash flows. And that template that you cannot see has all of the inflows that you can think of, and then boxes for you to add some of your own additional unique inflows. But basically, we are focused on the accounts receivable you collected. Keep in mind, this is when you actually deposit their check, not when it's recorded. So if you run your business by sending invoices, you will have to be mindful and review your cash cycle. How long does it take your customers to pay? And we want to deposit that amount in our forecast in the proper week. This also includes credit card payments because we know those come in relatively quickly. any dividends or interest income, cash at the time of sales. This is not your accounts receivable. Then we identify all the outflows. When are we paying our bills? This is your operational expense, your rent, your salaries, your wages, your debt payments, insurance. There's additional spots on this template where you can add your own unique expenses. The key here is to lay out for 13 weeks when you expect to pay certain bills. While some things like rent and phone and utilities are monthly and easy to determine, others may be paid once a quarter or even yearly. So we're trying to lay out when we have the resources to pay. The fluctuations in payments and receipts are what we're trying to determine. We're trying to lay out the inflows and outflows so we can see when we have a shortfall, or better yet, a surplus to carry us for a different week. So what do we do when we're done? Is there a way to improve or adjust our cash flow? There are lots of ways that we can improve our cash flow. So let's take a quick look at some strategies that we can implement to improve our cash flow. Next slide. So one of the biggest things right now is negotiating extended terms of credit. I'm always surprised how many businesses haven't taken the time, especially for larger suppliers, to have the conversation of longer terms. Can you move to just-in-time delivery and not sit on inventory? Especially today, some creditors are willing to extend from 15 days to 30 days without penalty. Then it is talking with your bank about your debt load. Today, many financial institutions are implementing deferments of payments, implementing interest-only payments, but most importantly, they want to be your partner and be kept in the loop. They want to work with you, and they want to find ways to make sure that your business stays in business. So talk to your bank. Marketing, creative ways to market your business. The companies we are working with are really, really stepping it up in order to move their products. I have seen multiple live Facebook events, social media campaigns, door pickups, drop-offs, influencers that they're reaching out to, and the local support, partnering with other businesses in their region has been really stepping up. Gift cards, again, another way to bring in some cash flow into your business. This is a great time to be innovative and think outside the box when it comes to your marketing strategies. In understanding your cash cycle, what is your cash cycle? Do you know that? Do you know how quickly you can turn inventory to cash in your bank? Can you develop promotions that turn your products and services into cash quicker? Can you offer a discount? Maybe putting together different types of packages. Look at your local resources. The SBDC at UW Oshkosh has been putting together a resource document trying to find all of the local resources that each city and county has, and we're happy to share that with you. These local EDOs and county and city organizations are developing all sorts of low interest RLF resources to support the survival of their local economy. Reach out and find out what's available. This is a really easily accessible resource for helping your cash flow. And then the SBA programs that Tammy went through, they are stepping up. They are trying to support some cash inflow to help you during those times when you know that you're going to be at a deficit. So I will end this with reinforcing how important planning is at this time. What is your plan for bouncing back? What are the next 3 months going to look like for you if the situation remains the same? Laying out that 13-week cash flow really helps you identify exactly what you need. What new projects could you launch, run, or coordinate? And how prepared are you to execute your plans? please reach out to your local SBDC network to help you navigate what programs are available and help you strategize what your next steps could be. And with that, I'm happy, I think we'll move to questions.
Thank you so much, Colleen and Tammy. So this is Stephanie. I'm just going to run through the questions that have appeared in the question box. So the first question we have here is, we applied for the EIDL loan twice, once before the $10,000 advance and once after. I'm told this may not be saved. Is that true?
So what we have been told by the Office of Disaster Assistance, and can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. I was so that it wasn't sure. Yeah, what we've been told by the Office of Disaster Assistance is that they do continue to process the loan applications. And if you have submitted, so an example is we've had businesses who submitted before the March 30th change in the portal, and then they went in and reapplied after the March 30th change in portal, where it was more streamlined and it was a much simpler process. If you have applied since March 30th, they are continuing to work through those applications, and it is our understanding you do not need to reapply.
Great, thank you so much. The next question is wondering about total applications received and percentage approved for both EIDL and PPP. And I think that information was in the PowerPoint slides, correct, Tammy?
Yeah, the information that we have there is the best information that we have available. I'm sure that they are still working on some data, but we don't have, pretty much what I've provided to you is the best information that we have. I don't know if more data will be coming out. And I don't know if Shira's unmuted as well, but if you want to unmute Shira, she may have some additional comments on that.
Yep,
Yeah,
Shira,
great. Yeah, we do not have, basically what we do have is data for each state as far as number of loans and the dollar amounts approved, average loan size, different industries, the way the industries were funded, but we don't have information at all on like percentage approved or total number of applications. Yeah, and it will, as we get additional information, we'll share that probably on our website, but we don't expect to get much more on that for a while. I mean, if the program opens up again, obviously that adds a lot of new data, and we're really prioritizing, directly working as much as possible with the small businesses and trying to make it as easy as possible for lenders to do the loans rather than just compiling a lot of highly specific data right now.
Great, thank you, Shira.
Sure.
The next question is about the EIDL, and if I have a confirmation number, will I still receive possible funding through that program? Since these are on,
as I mentioned before, they have said that they continue to process those applications. In addition, we are hoping that we will get additional EIDL funding, but they do continue to process those applications. And we've heard from businesses here in Wisconsin, and probably I would say the last week and a half to 2 weeks, that they have been receiving the advances. Obviously, they gave you that data before, but they've also been receiving the loans. So we do anticipate that within the next couple of weeks, you should hear something. And they've told us that those are being processed on a first come, first served basis. But if you have already submitted an EIDL application and additional funding is appropriated with any new bill that they do, we have been told that a new application is not required.
great, that's wonderful. The next question is referring to the PPP. They're wondering if they can add employees and what happens if someone leaves the company and they hire a replacement.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's one that we've heard quite a bit. So the guidance that we have been given in terms of number of employees, obviously the intent is to give your best faith effort to hire back the existing employees that you have. However, if those employees have moved on or they're unable to come back, you are able to hire somebody else in their place. So what we've been told that it is on head count, not the specific head. So as long as you maintain the numbers, you should be good.
Great. As a single member LLC, will the Schedule C of my 2019 taxes qualify for documentations for the PPP?
So I am going to refer you to both our website, sba.gov/coronavirus, as well as the Treasury website. There was a new final interim rule that came out. So the original final interim rule I think was 30 or 40 pages. There was a second interim final rule that came out that did specifically address self-employed. And I think the first one or two questions is specifically about that. So the first question is individuals with self-employment income who file a Form 1040C, and it talks specifically about how that works. And yeah, definitely. So go to our website, refer to that. It's a rather lengthy explanation, and so I can't really do that on the website here, but that's where I would refer you is to the second interim final rule, and you can find that at our website or Treasury.
Great, good resources. The next question is in reference to the PPP, but it's kind of the same questions. If I applied before the funds ran out, do I have to apply again?
Yes. What we are told is that the SBA may not have a queue if there is no funds appropriated. So if you applied and you didn't get in before the funding ran out, you will need to submit a new application through your lender. And again, keep in mind we've added lenders. We have worked with some lenders whose credentials had lapsed because they hadn't done an SBA loan for a while. And in addition, there are those non-bank lenders that are also available. So we want to make sure that there's plenty of resources available for a business to get this PPP loan.
Great. How does the EIDL emergency grant affect the forgiveness of the PPP? So can an employer decline the EIDL emergency grant if they also get the PPP?
So how we are told the EIDL and the PPP work together is that if you received an EIDL and a PPP, the use of funds may not be the same, meaning that if you use the PPP to pay payroll, that may not be the same use of funds for the EIDL loan. If the EIDL loan was used to pay payroll, then that does need to be refinanced into the PPP loan or paid off with the PPP loan, and then obviously it's eligible for forgiveness. A borrower does not need to accept the full EIDL loan in order to receive any advance. So again, if a borrower, let's say for example, was approved for a total of $50,000 through the EIDL loan, and they were eligible to receive the full up to $10,000 for the advance, that $10,000 is forgiven and they only would owe $40,000. So again, any advance amount that is received does not need to be repaid, and you do not have to take the full loan in order to get the advance.
Great. The next element in the questions box is just a suggestion. Please let the participants know it may take a few days for lenders to process the applications just due to sheer volume. And that leads in nicely to the next question. Can you walk through the timing on the receipt of PPP funds and payroll? If payroll this
great
week.
question. Oh, sorry.
Okay. There's more.
I'm sorry.
There's a little bit more to the question. If payroll this week covers work for last week and PPP is received this week, can it be used for payroll distributed this Friday?
Yeah, so our best answer, so first of all, in terms of the PPP, the bank must fund the PPP within 10 calendar days of the approval of the loan. But then also and we're still waiting for some of the final guidance to come out on some of the forgiveness and some of the other aspects of this. But what we are being told is that the dates are the dates that are paid. So I know that, payroll may have been incurred for a certain period and then it's paid, a week or 2 weeks later. Our understanding that it is based on the date paid.
Great. Let's see. And then just some feedback from Shira, who's at the SBA. She said the employees are accounted as FTE based on a 40-hour week. So for example, if you had 2 employees working 20 hours a week, that would count as 1 full-time employee, 1 FTE. So thank you for that, Shira.
So that was a little different than what we were told. So we were told that each employee counts as 1.
Okay, so we'll have to look into that, it sounds like. Let's see. The next question is, I applied to the PPP. My company started in 2008. I reported a loss for 2019. The bank said because the Schedule C indicated a loss, I didn't qualify. Does a negative Schedule C mean I don't qualify for PPP?
Yeah, and again, I would refer back to that second final interim rule. If it is negative or if it does show 0, then you are correct. You would not be eligible for the PPP. But again, I refer you back to the interim final rule for specifics on what is pulled from the tax return. But based on what you're saying, I would have to agree that it probably is unlikely that you would be eligible for a PPP.
Okay. Are we talking gross or net payroll costs?
Gross.
Okay.
And again, you can refer, on all of these, I would encourage you to look at our website or the Treasury website and to look at the interim final rules. It does have specific guidance in there, but I do believe that that's a gross number.
Okay, great. For PPP, will contract workers be covered?
No. The contractors or independent contractors are eligible to apply for a PPP on their own, so those are not utilized in your calculations.
Right. Can a sole proprietor use PPP loan claim unemployment as well, or is that double dipping?
That would definitely be double dipping.
Is there any concern that the debt relief funds for the debt relief program will run out?
So that's a great question for the debt relief. No, we have not been told any numbers for that. So at this point, we do expect that the loan payments will be made for 6 months on all 7A, 504, and microloans as well as new.
Okay. We received a small EIDL grant before the program ran out of money, but will the SBA be reaching out to us about taking a loan via the EIDL program?
Yes, it is our understanding that they are still processing the loan applications and will be connecting with borrowers. We are told that's on a first come, first served basis, but they do continue to process those applications.
Okay. So on any new 7A loans approved after March 27th, is the SBA paying the 6 months of the payments?
Yes, assuming that the loan is closed and funded before September 27th, the SBA will make 6 months worth of payments, principal, interest, and any fees associated.
Great. Can small businesses deemed non-essential and cannot legally open yet, can they wait to start the 8-week payroll assessment period once they're allowed to reopen?
No, we are told that the 8-week period starts with the first disbursement on the PPP loan. So the exact wording here is the 8-week period begins on the date the lender makes the first disbursement of the PPP loan to the borrower. The lender must make the first disbursement of the loan no later than 10 calendar days from the date of loan approval.
Okay, great. For a single member LLC taxed as a sole proprietor, can a member's draw against PPP funds be included in payroll costs for calculating the forgiveness amount?
So again, I'll defer back to the interim final rule and ask that you read the interim final rule for that.
Okay. Can a small business apply for the PPP loan through multiple lenders? Will the business be penalized if funded via one of the lenders if the communication goes to the other lenders?
So a business is only eligible for one PPP loan. And so you may work with different lenders, but just know that if a lender has an approval in the system for a PPP loan, no other lender can process one. We ran into that on a couple of different scenarios, but you can only have one PPP loan.
Okay. How long is it taking to ask for additional info or making a loan decision?
I'm assuming that that's on EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, and I don't really have a timeline for you on that, unfortunately. The disaster folks have not really provided us with much of an update on timing or anything of that nature. They have just told us that they do continue to process those. And like I said before, we have heard from businesses that in the last week to week and a half, they have been receiving communication from the disaster folks. So I would anticipate that it's going to be within the next week or two. But again, that's just based on what I am hearing from existing borrowers. I don't really have a good answer.
Okay. How will the process look if a second wave of PPP comes? How soon can people start applying and receiving funds?
So I'm really not able to answer that right now. That will be forthcoming. Obviously, you'll watch the media for the legislation when it passes, and I'm certain that there will be more. I would encourage you to go to our website, sba.gov/coronavirus. You can also sign up on our website, sba.gov/updates. Shira does do a great job of sending out newsletters and updates and press releases with the most recent information. But until it's actually passed and we hear, obviously dollar amounts, what the rules are, when the opening dates are, we can't really answer those questions.
Okay. If you applied for the PPP before you received the EIDL advance, how does that affect the PPP forgiveness?
I don't believe that the advance should be affected by the PPP. Shira, do you have any different answer on that?
No, I think, no, I don't know. We haven't, it has not come up. I think if you get the advance, I don't want to speculate. We'll have to just address that with our Office of Disaster Assistance. Up until recently, of course, that wasn't possible because the PPP didn't come on until, several weeks after the EIDL came on, so.
So the guidance that we've had is that if you had an economic injury disaster loan, and again, let's just say that it was a $50,000 economic injury disaster loan, and that you received a full $10,000 in funding, when you refinance that economic injury disaster loan into the PPP loan, it would just be the $40,000 that you actually owe, not the forgiven amount. But I don't know exactly how those rules work on how that's specified. But that was what we were given in terms of guidance with refinancing the EIDL into the PPP.
Okay. If a single member LLC receives PPP, can they also receive the PUA?
Yeah, I am pretty certain that the answer to that is no.
Okay.
So, a business owner will have to make a determination on their own if they're better going through the PPP or if they are better going through unemployment, but I do not believe you can receive both.
Okay. Lots of questions in here is if the slides will be available after the presentation. And yes, we can make those slides as well as the Excel spreadsheet for the cash flow available after the presentation. Are company contributions to employee health savings account allowed as forgivable in the PPP?
So I have not had the health savings account question yet, but I I guess I can't really answer that question. I do know that healthcare premiums are. I don't know that the HSA is any different, but I can't answer that specifically.
Okay.
Shira, have you heard anything different on that?
No, I have not. I was just seeing if I could.
It specifically says healthcare benefits, including insurance premium. It doesn't make a specific determination about HSAs.
Okay. Is there some way to track the EIDL application?
Unfortunately, at this time, we here at the district office do not have access to the Office of Disaster Assistance system, so we can't track anything locally. We can't provide any status updates. To the best of my knowledge, there isn't a way for you to track it. You can try calling the Disaster Assistance phone number, and again, you can get that at our website. You can also send them an email. What I will tell you is that as of about a week or week and a half ago, they really weren't providing any updates because they were working as hard as they could to actually process the application. So they didn't want to take the focus away from that. But I don't know, if they are providing updates now, but that would be the best information we've had is calling the disaster loan number.
If an organization hasn't heard anything yet on the EIDL with no deposit yet, does that mean they are not going to be awarded anything? And how would they know?
I can't say that's true. I don't know. What we're told is that they continue to process the applications as well as the advanced applications, and it's done on a first come, first served basis. So that's the best information that I have to offer.
Great. The next question is about the qualifiers for the 75% eligible and the other 25% eligible. Is there a checklist? What is the specific process to appropriately document to plan for the forgiveness application process? So a couple different questions in there.
Yeah, so in terms of documentation, do your best to do the correct documentation. The way that the law is written is that at least 75% of the loan proceeds must have been used for payroll purposes in order to be eligible for forgiveness. So, that's why that documentation is going to be the most important. And again, you will be certifying to the lender when you request forgiveness as to what those funds were used for. So documentation is what I would say.
Are the actual PPP regulations posted on SBA site somewhere?
Yes, you can go to, let's just see. If you go to sba.gov/coronavirus, it has the, and I apologize, I don't have the website up right now, but if you, it does give the interim final rule on there. It does also have some frequently asked questions. There's a number of bits of information on there. So if you go to the funding part of the coronavirus, the information is listed there. In addition, you can also refer to the Treasury website as well.
Great. I got a PPP loan and an advance on the EIDL loan. What do I do? I wasn't included in the PPP loan as an owner. And also, can I apply for the PUA?
Yeah, I think we've answered those questions already.
It has been mentioned that there's no queue for the applications. How would a business know if their application is being considered?
You would have received a loan number from the bank, so I would encourage you to reach out to the lender that you are working with to see if a loan number was assigned. If a loan number was not assigned by the SBA before the funding lapsed, then you do not have a PPP. But that would be a question to reach out to your lender for.
Okay. And this one is for PPP. Do forgivable costs have to be incurred between loan origination date and June 30th?
So the 8-week period starts with the first disbursement of the loan. So that is the 8-week period. And again, On some of these specific questions, we are still waiting for some guidance on the forgiveness aspect of it. I do anticipate that those should be coming out anytime. Truthfully, we expected that guidance to have already been out. So we're really waiting on a lot of that information. So again, I continue to watch our website for that, for some of the very specific questions. But the 8-week period does start with the first disbursement of the PPP loan.
Okay, great. So many banks turn down applicants rather than having them on the queue. Could SBA send clear instructions to the banks?
I did not hear the question fully.
Yeah. Okay, so many banks turn down their applicants rather than keeping a queue. Would SBA send clear instructions to the banks?
So the clear instructions to the bank was that the SBA cannot maintain a queue. So if we don't have funding for something, we can't have a queue for applications. So you would continue to work with your bank, and when it reopens, you would submit an application through them.
Okay, great. I'm just clicking through a lot of the same questions that we already answered here. So EIDL, you do not have to reapply. PPP, you do have to reapply. What if we do not have our 1040 tax forms available yet for 2019, as the tax deadline changed to July?
Yeah, great question. So if you go according to what is in the interim final rule, you have to complete a 1040, or you have to complete your tax return. It does not necessarily need to be filed, but you do have to have it completed.
Great. PPP is not available to not-for-profit organizations, is that correct?
There is a specific list of not-for-profit organizations. And let me just find that again real quick. I know it's tribal organizations and 501c3.
And then the 501c19s, the veterans organizations.
Great. So again, a lot of the same questions, so give me a minute here as I scroll through. Do companies need to bring their employees back with the same number of hours they had before they were laid off?
So again, it's all based on headcount and payroll costs. So, I guess I would leave that up to you.
Okay, great. Can one apply for multiple relief programs? Yes, you certainly may. Can the grant be declined, not the loan?
Interesting. So how I'll answer that to the best of my ability is that the businesses that we have heard from. So what we were told initially is that you would receive communication from the Office of Disaster Assistance, and then the funding should be in your account shortly thereafter. But what I'll tell you in practice is the businesses that we've heard from, some of them had communication from the Office of Disaster Assistance, and then their advance was in their account. However, others just logged into their accounts and saw that their advance was there. So I don't have a real definitive way to answer that question, because we've heard of different ways that people are receiving things. So if you do receive the advance and you don't want the advance, if you want to return that, you will be assigned a loan officer or a case manager through the Office of Disaster Assistance, and you can work with that case manager in order to return that if that's what you would like to do. But that's probably the best answer I have at this point.
Okay, great. If I applied for an EIDL loan, do I need to roll that into a 7A 504 loan program separately? I'm not sure I understand.
No, you don't. You can keep that EIDL loan as an EIDL loan. You do not need to roll that into a 7A or a 504. With the EIDL loan, remember, it does come with an automatically built-in 12-month deferral of payments. So I'm not quite sure exactly what that question was asking, but no, it is not necessary to roll that up into a other type of SBA loan, unless, of course, it's for the PPP.
Right. What if you're a business in Wisconsin, but you became quarantined in California? Are you eligible for assistance?
I don't know why where you're quarantined would have any effect on your eligibility as a business in Wisconsin. So I would think you would be eligible.
Okay. Is workers' comp counted as eligible for PPP?
So it's pretty clear what it can be used for. So again, it says that salary, wages, or tips, employee benefits, including costs for vacation, parental, family, medical, or sick leave, allowance for separation or dismissal, state and local taxes, and then sole proprietor or self-employment income. So I guess my advice would be is if it's not specifically listed in there, that the answer would be no.
Okay. If the PPP is only partially forgiven and the rest converts to a loan, does the rest of that money still have to be used for payroll?
So there, again, what the use of the loan funds is pretty clear in here, and it does say payroll costs, including benefits, interest on mortgage obligations, rent, or utilities. So, I would stick with what the use of funds is designated for in here, would be my best answer.
Okay, great. Shira just provided a link for the SBA, sba.gov/Paycheck Protection, if you want any of that, as well as Treasury. The website there is www.treasury.gov.
Thanks, Shira.
Yeah, thank you so much. Lots of thank yous in here, lots of repeat questions about PPP and EIDL. I think that's it. So the rest of the questions were kind of repeats of what we've already asked. Thank you so much for participating today. Any closing comments, Tammy or Colleen or Shira?
Again, we want to thank you, and we are anticipating an additional round of funding, so we anticipate that there will be more questions. Hopefully we will have additional sessions as well, but we really want to thank you for participating in this and wish all of the businesses on the line the very best.
I echo your sentiment, and just know that reach out to your local SBDC office for any resources or support that you need. We're here to help.
Thanks to you both, and thanks for everyone for attending. Again, the slides and the Excel sheet will be available after the call. Thank you so much.